I just put the thing
on
that
such a fake out.
About to make our entrance, and we are here.
Oops.
So, there's
a delay, so we're not live, but that's fine.
We're not live. Now we're live.
Also, I forgot to shut the sound off.
Well, speaking, I did put myself on Do Not Disturb, and now I have to put my lights on Do Not Disturb.
Good call.
Random encounter of children running in during a panel. So, welcome to Save Against Fear 2020. All online, all the time. I hope everybody's enjoying the content. I know I got to pop in for a little while to hear the developers of Emberwind talking about that system and why they made it and stuff. It's really fascinating. So lots of good stuff. Also, please support Bahana Group. They do amazing work with getting therapeutic games to kids and teens and spreading that message and doing research and all kinds of things. So thank you all so much for being here. So I'm really excited just to kind of dive right into this panel and this discussion today. This has been something I've been wanting to talk about for a while, which is playing between law and chaos, bringing random elements into your game. And so really quick, we'll introduce ourselves. So I'm Dr. Megan Connell. I'm a therapeutic dungeon master. I'm also the dungeon master for Clinical Role, which is a live play D&D game here on Geeks Like Us every other Monday, where all of my players are other therapeutic dungeon masters and psychologists. And I am joined today by Conor. Conor, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Conor. I'm one of the co-founders of Gemhammer and Sons Gaming. We make more better game stuff for Dungeons and Dragons and tabletop gaming in general. Primarily make it for D&D 5e, although I did some other things in the past. I am not as prepared for this as I would have liked, so I just sort of trailed off there. We primarily make decks of cards. We just started making adventures. We did our first hardcover book, the Gemhammer Grimoire, which is for pre-order right now on gemhammer.com. This is probably backwards, I just realized. Although I'm going to find out. Oh, it is? It is flipped around I don't know. Yeah. See, on my screen, it's backwards, so I'm like holding this up like, this looks foolish. But that's okay. Tons of spells, all the more better game stuff that you could like. You could check us out at gemhammer.com. Yeah.
And if you use the promo code Geeks Like Us Geeks Like Us with an exclamation point, you get 10% off.
That's true. I forgot all about that.
That is an awesome thing to do. But I'm really excited to have Conor on because I want to tell a little bit of a story first before we launch into how do you bring random elements into a game and how do you manage that and run a game with random pieces in it. So I'm pretty open that I struggle with anxiety, and being a dungeon master who's anxious, that tends to lend itself into over preparing. My first session of Clinical Role that I ran, we were doing a 4-hour game then, and I had 9-point font.
Hours. Yikes.
Yeah. Well, I had written out in 9-point font 6 or 7 pages worth of session prep, which was ridiculous and unsustainable and terrible. I only knew how to really railroad players and have like one story. This is what it has to be. And it was really hard. And so I recognized like I really needed to let go of control of the story because it's not my story, it's our story, the story of everybody at the table. And so I wanted to start bringing in more random elements. So when I was at PAX East in 2018, I believe, was when I picked up this little guy, which is a Gemhammer.
What have you done to the box? Oh my God.
I've used this thing in every game I play.
I'm sending you a new one. This is disgusting. I'm upset.
Yeah, it is. No, which it's the Deck of Wonder. It's random stuff, and so I started bringing this into my games just to be like, you know what? I read through all the cards. I was like, nothing in this is terribly game breaking. Like it's all just kind of weird stuff. And the more I started using it, the more I was loving it because it was bringing in stuff I hadn't expected or encountered or prepped for, of course, because how could you prep for 100 random, or this is more than 100 cards, right? This one's like 110 or something.
It's like 108, something like that.
Yeah.
I don't think they're all spell cards though. Like, so there's like a card that like tells you what it does, and we have to put the OGL on a card. So yeah, there's that. So I don't remember the exact count on that one, but there's roughly 110 cards in the box. How many of them are spells? There's more than 100, but we always just put 100. Like almost all of our decks are. It's 100. It's more than 100, but
yeah,
105 doesn't sell. So we're just like it's 100, close enough.
A little bit more than 100 cards. More than 100, less than 110. Yeah, it started making the game a lot more fun and a lot more enjoyable. And like when I brought it into Clinical Role, it created all of these hilarious storylines. One of which is like why now we have a much better relationship with Gemhammer and Gaming,
That's what the deck.
That's what the box is supposed.
That's what the box is supposed to. Before dogs eat it.
Now, this is like drinks have been set on it. It gets tossed around the room for games. Like it's bad, but there's a card in here that like your character's name becomes Dabney for a month. Dr. B on Clinical Role has now drawn that card twice.
I wanna actually tell. This is something only 2 people know. Well, sorry, continue, and then we'll come back to that.
No. Well, yeah, but we brought this in, and the game became more fun. And so, learning to lean into random stuff, learning to lean into things that are unexpected in the game, I think one, it creates a lot less anxiety for the dungeon master, because it's like if I am completely in control, everything that is good is on me, but everything that is bad is also on me. Whereas if it's all of us in control, we all can steer and shift things in a way that the group is going to like and the dynamic is going to enjoy much more.
Of course, another way to look at it is Gemhammer is backseat DMing from 1,000 miles away. So.
Exactly. But what was the story you were going to say, Conor?
Yeah, so there's 2 things about the Dabney thing that I think is great. So there's this idea that Joe is my counterpart. He and I founded Gemhammer and Sons. There's this idea that our former boss kind of instilled in us called the Doppler effect. And it's about creation and working together. And it's a ridiculous concept, but a bad idea moving fast becomes a funny, good idea. And the Dabney joke was like one of the last cards we made when we made this, the Deck of Wonder. This was the first thing we ever made. We just we had a spreadsheet of what's good, what's bad, what's weird, and whatever, and we had to fill in the last 5 on here. And it was 2 a.m, and I was watching Bravest Warriors, and one of the characters just walked on screen and called one of the characters named Danny Dabney. But just very nonchalantly, like this was totally fine. Just hey, what it is, Dabney? And everyone just kept moving forward, and for no reason, that just killed me. And I laughed for a good half hour. It's not even a funny story, not a funny joke. But I put it right in there because when you're really tired, a bad idea moving fast suddenly becomes a good idea. And for some insane reason, that card has come up more than all the jokes we sat there and agonized over. Like, oh, is this funny? Does this land the same way? Then this random Dabney. That one, for some reason, people are drawing that and just loving it for some reason. The other story about Dabney was Dr. B, who would become Dabney.
Dabney.
Emerald? It's been so long since his character has had a real name.
Yeah, his character's actual name is Emerald.
Emerald.
But,
but he came up to us at PAX East 2017, 18?
Been 19.
19? No, maybe, 19 was this past year. We still had that.
No, we had 20. PAX East 20 did happen.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Sorry.
This is the weird.
It's almost like I haven't left this porch in 8 months. So yeah, maybe it was 19. He came up to us, Dr. B, very excited. Hey, it's me. It's Dr. B. And we're like, hey, from Clinical Role. Cool, man. What's that about? You know us. Nope. But we tag you not a sponsor all the time. And we had a lengthy conversation. We thought it was great when he introduced himself to us, but it was very funny because he was very excited to be like, hey, it's me. And we're like, Who are you?
Yeah, it's all this free advertising you'd be getting on our stream.
Well, no one ever at us, and no one ever hashtagged us. So there is no reason in the world why we would have ever known. So you're right. We weren't a sponsor. We didn't even know you existed until that point.
Yeah, it's been really fun though, and like this idea of leading into these random elements, and like I really enjoy diving into Reddit and going into like the GM posts and reading about stuff. And it's interesting as you mature as a GM. Like I think you can start to recognize like, oh, this person's trying to control too much. They're worried about their players having more agency and control, and so it's interesting when it's just like, guys, just lean into the random stuff. They're like, oh, don't bring the deck of wonder into, or the deck of many things. Don't have the deck of many things in your game. That's just going to completely break your game.
There's nothing wrong with a deck of many things.
It's fine. Like it's fine. And like if you have like a specific beat that you're going towards, of course it can derail it, but that's not necessarily bad.
I find that it's like we make a dozen decks that are random things happen. And I find that the people that come back and say, this has derailed my campaign, actually don't know how to DM a session that isn't a railroad.
Yeah.
Because your players can de-roll way worse than what's statically printed on cards. And there's 100 cards in this thing. You don't have to put all 100 of them on the table. The deck of many things is 20 effects, 18, something like that. Mm-hmm. Like, okay. You also, like, it's got a rarity. Like, they're not getting it at level 1. So by the time you're getting it, most of the things that can happen, some of them are pretty crazy and awesome, but it's random that those things happen. They have to get to that point. Also, something really bad could happen, and they know that. They're like making a conscious choice to draw from it. The Deck of Wonder is meant to be a replacement table for like a failed potion or a broken spell or a Rod of Wonder or something like that. So anytime you'd want a random magic spell effect, it creates a random magic spell effect. But with the Deck of Many Things, like, this is an item that's been in the game pretty much since its inception, and it's changed very little in the last 40 years. It came out in Greyhawk, so the item is over 40 years old. There were 2 versions of it running, the Greyhawk version and then a more modern version. And that version, like, we're still using the same rules. They've changed like 6 words in it. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter. They had to change a couple of cards because like armor class works in the other direction now. So, but for the most part, it hasn't changed. There's a reason it hasn't changed, because as much as people like, it's so broken, it ruins the game. Not really. Your player outthinking a situation that you didn't plan for will break your game way worse than 20 some odd static cards that you already know exactly what they're going to do and can plan for, well, what if this 1 out of 20 happens? Then I do this. But I find that the random aspects of DMing are such a lifesaver. And the thing is that Wizards of the Coast products do this. Like, and for some reason, people don't really put them together and identify them as the same thing. The random tables in the books, like the random encounter tables, the random loot tables, those kinds of things, they're already doing that for you. You don't look at those as random. You haven't considered them in the same way that you've considered a Deck of Many Things or a random magic spell effect, because it's on a table in a book, and this seems much more official. Now, those have been play tested, but also, like, how much, like, the average DM, GM, they're not sitting down and play testing all their material ahead of time unless they're DMing directly out of a book, in which case they're relying on those previous play tests. I'm studying game design in grad school right now, and game testing is such a huge thing, and you can play test it for 6 months, and there's that one person that just thought a little differently than everyone else that will just derail everything, and you can't prepare for that. There's that one person that's going to have stone shape or shape stone, whatever it is, and just like the spigot of water that's shooting out of your stone wall slowly filling up the room. They're like, okay. And now it's covered and it's not filling the room. You can't do that. Really? It's like a level 1 spell.
Yeah, of course he can do that.
Okay, of course he could do that. He did it. It's over, and your whole trap falls apart. So I feel like a lot of these random events in gaming, like kind of these random table generators, random decks of cards, random events, they can really make your job a whole lot easier. Like you look at video
Mhm.
games, every single instance that you run into is not scripted. Like no one sat down and scripted exactly what's in every single chest in every single game. Many games rely on a random loot table. There's a reason for that. There's a reason why video games do that, and there's also a reason why tabletop games should do something like that. It's because if I had to in a dungeon say that this is what's in every single chest in every single room in every single encounter, that's a whole lot of space.
Yeah.
Whereas, and it's also a lot to keep track of. Whereas, if there's one page in that book that lists 36 items in a row and there's a percentages and these are what could be in the chest, that's one page and you're done. And
Yep.
every time that you need to consider that, you're going to go back and you're going to roll and you're done. So I think that there's a lot of agency for the players when you kind of open it up to these random events, but also it's a lot of time saving for the DM when you kind of have these tools available.
Well, and it really is, and, like, one of the things that has fascinated me so much is how these random things can really progress the plot you have planned.
Hmm.
Because there's one of the therapeutic games I was running, I always give my players some way to pull from the deck. Like they get potions of wonder that they can consume. They get, which I always make the potions of wonder dirt cheap. Is a silver piece per one, so 1 gold they can buy 10.
You are a kind DM.
Oh well, come on, for this, yeah, I want them pulling from this all the time.
Yeah.
Um, but they were on a quest, and I hadn't done a very good job of giving urgency to the quest.
Hmm.
I was trying to find ways without just kind of fourth wall breaking, being like, "Everybody, this thing you're on is really super important. If you don't do it, bad things are going to happen to this area that you're in." But they pulled from the deck, and they got, "You are transported 5 years into the future." And so it was this perfect moment for me to be like, I could show what happens if they don't intervene. And like they come to this wasteland and they see this thing happening and that thing happening. And I only made it last a minute. And then they're brought back to the present. They're like, that was this they all kind of looked around the table like, oh my God, if we don't do this, everything's going to get ruined. I said, okay, cool. Now
Suddenly the lackadaisical, we'll get to it. We want to collect all the feathers first, so we get the cloak of magic feathers, and we want to do all the side quests first. Now it's like, screw the feathers. We gotta go.
Yeah, exactly. And like, it's so interesting too, because like so much character development can come from the whole improvisational bit that comes with bringing these random elements into the game, like really leaning into the idea of yes and or no but,
Mhm.
and building upon this. I've got early elementary school kiddos, and I've started doing a thing with the at-home schooling where before they jump into their morning Zoom meeting, we play Dungeons and Dragons now. And like it's a kindergartner and a first grader. They have their dice, and they don't have a character sheet. They are just telling me what they want to do. And we're teaching them all how it's like we're all building the world together. It's, I'll point to one kid and be like, okay, you're in the magical forest. What do you see there? See fairies. Okay, cool. Point to the other kid. And what else do you see? It's like, okay, so we see fairies and goblins. Okay, so, and like, it's that shared enjoyment of things rather than
Mhm.
learning like I have to have tight control over something to enjoy it. It's like if I loosen the control, there is a lot more input and it can be something much more dynamic and fun. And like that idea of learning to roll with the punches and learning to flow with things that don't go according to plan. Like even therapeutically, like I teach a form of therapy called acceptance and commitment therapy. And like a big part of that is essentially like don't hold on to your expectations too tightly because that's going to get you in trouble. Because it's like,
Actually,
okay.
sorry, go ahead.
No,
Finish.
go ahead.
Oh, I actually played in the game with the Deck of Wonder, and that was a lot of fun. Having made it, like I know what it does back on the other end, but to be on the other side of the screen is a lot of fun. And a good friend of mine, Dom Honey from Wicked Good Gaming, he DM'd that campaign, and we were up against a red dragon. It was like the big bad, and we had it was a wild magic sorcerer, but he was playing it like an alchemist that was failing at making potions all the time. And we got teleported to the elemental plane of fire.
Oh gosh.
Right into the city of brass. Just there and that's how he ruled it, was because it just says that you go to the plane of fire. It doesn't say for how long, it's just you're there now. And he rolled with it. He just like our whole thing was to go deal with this dragon lady and like stop her evil army of red dragons that was happening. And suddenly the big bad and the heroes sent to get rid of her just gone from the world. And now we're in a totally different place up here in the middle of this otherworldly metropolis. And there's a red dragon up above. Like, and anyone that's familiar with like the outer planes and things like that in D&D, like a red dragon in the middle of the city of brass, like that's not a huge deal to them. They're not like, oh no, dragon attack. They're like,
they're just like,
shoot it down.
Yeah.
Just okay, and it's coming down. So the dragon's gone. The dragon's like beelining it out of there, and now we have to deal with this dragon fight on the edge of a city while we're chasing after it. But then also, we don't belong here. We're not a bunch of fire genasi hanging out here. We're like a lizard folk and like a couple of humans and a bugbear, I think. Like just like, oh, well, this isn't. I don't remember lakes being on fire before. What do we do? You know, and so we suddenly had this whole new campaign that happened where we were dealing with this threat, but now this threat seems somewhat inconsequential where we are now. But we don't belong here. We want to get home, and how do we do that?
Yes.
So him just rolling with that and like embracing it, and suddenly like allowing the campaign to turn on its heel like that, it felt organic. Like if I didn't know this was directly responsible, that would have been like a great season 2. Like this was something I was watching, whereas it was like this kind of twist ending where you're like, aha, we saved the day, but it's not we go home the conquering heroes, we got rid of the dragon and saved the day. It's that now we're trapped in this extra dimensional firescape and gotta get home, maybe, or however that's gonna work out. And I don't even think we ever went home. I think we just wound up plane hopping, going on wacky adventures, and that was like a great segue into that.
Yeah, and like this is bringing these random elements in and like that yes and stuff. Like, so a book that most certainly changed my life as a GM DM is Sly Flourish's The Lazy Dungeon Master and The Lazy Dungeon Master Returns. Because what he teaches in that is like keep your entire session planned on just a 3x5 card. Now I don't completely do that. I'm terrible at remembering names and things, so like I need a little bit more space. But I don't do 7 pages of 9-point font prep anymore. Like there's certainly like you need to know the construct of the world that you're in. I think it was I think it was last year at which seems like 10 years ago now at
everything.
Con. Oh my gosh. But talking about world building, someone said like know the edges of your box. Kind of have an idea of where the edges of your box are, but don't really worry about too much about what's in the box. Let the game start to fill in what's in the box as you go. But you do want to know where it ends, so that way you don't just kind of infinitely get bigger and then it becomes unmanageable. But it's really great just kind of seeing that of like, okay, let's slowly build these things in and let's all cooperate and build it together. Because like you're saying, like when you let go of that control, because like, that your DM probably had some idea of what you all were going to do after you defeated that red dragon.
And even if you took it and reflavored it to just be now it's here on this plane.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's great.
Yeah.
And like it's so interesting how much better this stuff can get when you can find that way to let go of control and to not be so invested in it. So I told my story of kind of how I came to bringing more random elements into the game. What, like, you are great at this. I mean, you build random
Oh
stuff
well.
to happen in games. But like, I've gotten to the pleasure of being in several games that you GM, and just like your ability just to be like, "Yep, that happened,"
Well,
completely to roll with stuff. How did you
so when I
get
first
there?
started GMing, I had these very elaborate stories written out. So nothing ever published, but I love to write, and I have like a million short stories and stuff on my computer that I've never done anything with. And world building is big for me, and so I had this whole like idea of how everything fit together on this thing, and I was trying to pepper in all this stuff and lead them to discover. But I quickly realized that, or probably not quick enough, because we stopped playing for some of these mistakes. What I valued in that world building and what I was building in the world, a lot of my players didn't. Not so much that the
Mhm,
world I was building wasn't interesting to them. It's just that's not what they're getting out of it. They're here to roll those dice and then go, okay, I killed it. And that's what they're in it for. One guy is just like really looking to build on his character, and the rest of the world is window dressing for the character he's
mhm,
created. And when I create this big elaborate world, even if I've created it with them in mind or trying to put them in the setting, it's not the same as a world revolving around that character. Now, no character should be the center of any D&D campaign, but if that's the character, like in their head the world is revolving around them, then they don't care what's going on around them. So I quickly realized that the sessions I planned out, there were these big elaborate things where I had pages of stuff where I was playing out of a book. Those weren't great. People, they were okay with them, but they didn't love them nearly as much as kind of like what you were saying. I had one sheet of paper. I have, this is the goal, this is what they're doing, these are the 4 NPCs they're going to interact with, and everything else is they're going here to do the thing and it's done. And then I
mhm,
have a map of the place they're going, if I even have that much, and a stat block or two for the things they're going to encounter, and that's it. Those sessions were so much better that it got to the point where I kind of stopped planning them. I knew the bullet points. I knew this is the one where they
yeah,
get the MacGuffin stone and bring that back home. This is the one where they find the map that leads to the MacGuffin stone. This is the one where, and it just kind of walks back from there, where this is what they're going to do. And I think my favorite one was, I knew they were going to this ice village, and they were going to get some elemental gemstone. They were going to steal from giants. That's as far as I planned it out. So I had like 4 giant stat blocks and nothing else. That's all I really had. And so they got there, and I was like, yeah. And so you arrive in this snow-covered mountain town, and they were like, all right, we want to go to the tavern. What's this place like? And I immediately started like imagining the tavern at the beginning of Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark. So
yes.
it's like this rundown, snow covered place, and they're like, we want to talk. Who's in charge here? Like they're trying to like talk themselves up, and I like didn't really have a plan for who was in this place, so I just like made it up. So that's the creation of Buck Bullmoose, and Buck Bullmoose is here to. You boys want some alcoholic moose milk? It's delicious. It's a White Russian. I just called that, and he's like a big yak man. And he's
Oh my
just
god, it's
going
amazing.
by everything, and like we spent way too much time just talking to Buck Bullmoose, and I'm like, so gemstone.
Quest?
Stealing the gemstone. Nope, no. Can we bring him? Is he our NPC? He's our NPC now, and I'm like, I guess if you want, you sure. And you know what? Like those are the kinds of things that just like kind of made me realize that like and I haven't DM'd in a long time, except for when I'm online with you guys
Mhm,
now. But like you can plan out everything to a T, but inevitably like what's happening on the other end of your DM screen is going to decide a lot of what happens. And sometimes just kind of making it up as you go and letting them be a part of that, even if they don't know you're making it up with them.
mhm.
Like there's a lot there. There's a lot of interaction that happens. It makes them feel like they're part of it because they are. Um, and now you are telling a story together. They walked into this place. I gave them a bare bones description of a snow swept village, everyone's wearing fur. Next thing you know, everyone's having white Russians with a giant yak man talking about storming the castle. This is your boy later, like, and they're having a great time. And I think that's anytime that happens, it's a win, because at the end of the day, like, you have this deep, interesting story that you want to tell about the blah blah blah. Yeah, but what's their investment in it?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Well,
you got to build that investment, and I think that just letting the world breathe and letting people be part of it before you start trying to like tell them that there's like this thing in the
yeah.
world that's nefarious and interesting and you should care about it. Let them care about the world first, and then give them the things in the world that are relevant to the plot that they need to start caring about.
Most definitely. And like, I think one of the big things too that I've noticed with bringing in more random encounter or just random elements and giving that control to the players is their characters suddenly develop so much more. Um, on a clinical role, definitely like with Emerald getting the Dabney card twice, like that's had a huge amount of like
'Cause
growth.
he was originally like the edge lord, wasn't he?
Oh yeah,
He was
yeah.
like the dark brooding. I'm Batman. I mean Emerald.
Yes, essentially, and it created this goofiness, but then like also one session that we have not gotten to play yet, but we are going to play it at some point. Like the very first card that got pulled was Adam Davis's character Gragnold suddenly could understand small animals,
Mhm.
and then he drank a second one so we had potions of wonder, so he drank a second potion, and the second thing was now you are the sworn enemy of all chipmunks for the next 3 days. And they actually want to go back and do an episode where they play as the chipmunks terrorizing the party.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, and like it was great though, because like and just to see like it's like okay, so now like Gragnold doesn't like chipmunks and is always convinced chipmunks want to kill him, even though like the 3 days passed months ago in game. But anytime he sees a chipmunk, it's a little right, and just giving that permission of like something goofy and strange happening, and like one of our players, this is her first campaign, Dr. Rachel Coert, and I feel like too for her having the deck of wonder and having those random elements has given her in some ways permission to be a little bit more silly and to take a few more risks.
Mhm.
Because like she was telling Emerald off for some reason, and he was telling her to lighten up, not to worry so much, and she drank a potion of wonder pulled from the deck, and every bird in a 5-mile radius died. And so we got this great little dynamic going back and forth. Like, see, I told you bad things are happening, and like you're telling me to relax, and no, every bird just died. This is
But
terrible.
then they all come back to life like a day
They all
later.
come back to life, yeah.
Yeah.
But it still was just in that moment, and it started creating this permission. Like I guess that's the thing is,
It's also really funny that Emerald, even though he's Dabney now,
yeah,
is telling other people to lighten up, because you go back and
yeah,
start watching some of you guys' earlier sessions. He really is like this dark, brooding, like very stereotypical dark elf. Even though I don't think he is a dark elf, but he'd be perfect if he was a dark elf. So
oh
he's
yeah,
like this dark, brooding, like, yeah, well, and now all of a sudden he's like, hey guys, lighten up. Let's just drink some potions of wonder. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, did these have some sort of deleterious like effects, like potions of wonder creating his mind? Like, I think I'm gonna have to write an adventure about that now. It's all right.
oh yeah, yeah. Well,
But
it's
now he's the
funny.
fun, funny one. It's like, it's okay. Sometimes they call me Dabney, and it's like, who are you? What happened
Yeah,
to
like
this
what
guy?
happened? But it's that permission, because I think when you come across as a dungeon master who's super duper prepped and prepared, and it, it's very intimidating for the players, because I think there can be this feeling of like I have to know my character completely. I have to know them in and out. And most of the time I think people start a game with this idea of like I think it'd be funny to play, or I think it'd be cool to play, right? And like we don't typically have much more fleshed out than that. Like when the level 20 campaign I just wrapped up, my character started off as like, I think it'd be really funny to play a punk rock dragonborn bard. and who's all broody and you don't get me, mom and dad. But then that like turned it, having permission to be a little goofy with that and being a little silly, it gave me the ability to put more into that. But like we had to have those abilities to joke around and to get to know things. And like eh, by having these unexpected encounters pop in, it gives us that ability, I think, to reflect in a different way.
Mhm.
But also like I don't think I'm saying this quite eloquently enough. I've just seen it where when the dungeon master can learn to roll with punches and just to go with what comes up, it seems like the players relax a lot more. I'm thinking specifically of Matt Mercer and his players on Critical Role, where like he's a very very prepared dungeon master. Like he
Yes.
has notes. I mean, he's written 2 books about his world. Like he knows his world really
And there's a
well.
lot to be said for doing that. But I think that they're a very different kind of like
Well, they
game
are, but
session
like
than like what is typically happening between players in a game shop or even at home, you know?
But like the thing that I love though that he's been doing more recently, and I don't know if this is like a change in his GMing style or just a comfort level with showing not being perfect,
Mhm.
of he's been creating some really wacky magic items and just giving them to the party to see what the hell they do with them. Like he made this stuff called the dust of deliciousness, which you put on food and it makes it taste absolutely delicious,
No matter what it is.
no matter what it is.
There you go.
And it also gives you a disadvantage on wisdom saving throws. And spoilers for campaign 2 of Critical Role, but Laura Bailey's character Jester used it on a hag and was able to cast modified memory on a hag to convince the hag that she had agreed to lift a curse she had put on one of the party members.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And
I mean,
like,
and that's super like there's no way he planned that. You know, that's
no,
not something he sat down and like wrote out. You know, it's just I'm gonna give it to him and let's see what they do with it.
yeah,
And I think there's a lot to be said for doing that kind of a thing where it's here, take this thing, let's have fun with it. And he gave them a deck of many things in the first campaign.
mhm,
You know,
yeah,
with the same kind of idea. Like, let's just slide that across the table and
just see what you do.
we'll just see what
Just
you
go
do.
for it.
And
Yeah,
a lot of great moments happened with
because
Grog,
of that
you know,
stuff.
pulling
Oh my
from the
god,
deck. You know, some of the best
it's so
moments
great.
from the first series was because of that deck.
Yeah, and when we can let go of that control and just it, I saw somebody giving a talk about the difference between being a hacker and having the non-hacker mind. That like when you have the non-hacker mentality, you're given something and like, what does this do,
Mhm.
right? A hacker mentality is more, what can I do with this? And I think that's the kind of thinking we want to encourage people in role-playing games, and also I think specifically for tabletop games or tabletop therapeutic games, where we're like, I want you to be able to think like, how can I utilize the tools I have to the best way possible? What can I do? Rather than what does this do? What can I do with this? And like Adam Davis and Adam Johns are famous for making like kind of ridiculous magic items that they give their players. They talk about the story of giving one of their players a box of endless pineapples. It's like the
They
first
should come work
solution is
for us.
always pineapples. Let's just shake out some pineapples. I've given boxes of endless toothpicks to my players. Like they just all those just kind of strange things. It's like, let's just see what you do with this.
Joe and I played a Halloween game a few years ago, and he wanted to play a transmutation wizard, and he didn't want magic items. He didn't want anything. He didn't even want starting equipment. He just wanted a backpack filled with ball bearings. And even though there's no version of this that would allow a wizard to be carrying this many ball bearings, because essentially, like, if you filled like a camping backpack with ball bearings, this thing's
Be heavy.
yeah, it'd be heavy. Like it's essentially filled with steel, and
Yeah.
it's just, he's just strapping it on his back. Like even ignoring encumbrance and weight and all that, it still doesn't make sense that he would need to pass a hefty strength check to be able to carry this thing around. You know, I just let it go
Mhm.
because you know what? I want to know what he's going to do with this. I want to see what he makes out of all these ball bearings, knowing full well they're going to turn back into ball bearings some amount of time later.
Yeah.
So have fun.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing is like at the end of the day, these are games.
Right.
And the talk was just in there. It's like, well, let's define what a game is. And like, we can go into the nitty gritty of what a game is, but to me, the games we want to run are fun. Like, number one, we want it to be fun and an enjoyable experience. That doesn't always mean that we're laughing and joking, but that we are enjoying ourselves. And like the game master, the dungeon master, you get to have fun too. And honestly, I will say bringing this stuff, bringing these, random decks into your game,
That's it.
it's
Keep showing off more of my products.
so
Very
much
good.
fun. I will advertise. I have them all. I love them. They're great. But like we played one game where one of your decks, I'll do an ad for you right now, is
You
like
don't
the
need to. It's
deck
all
of
right.
Sunders and the deck of Blunders, where you pull for natural 20s and natural ones. And we had one fight where I think we pulled 10 cards between the two decks.
3.
It was
So
3. Okay, yeah, you watched that one, yeah.
we play our weekly game on Mondays right around the same time you guys are, but we always get over like an hour and a half before you do. So I was driving home from that and I thought I'd pop in to see what you guys were doing. And it was between that and the Deck of Wonder. Between
Yeah.
Sunders, Blunders, and Deck of Wonder, like half a dozen crits and then some number of crit fails happened all in
Yeah.
one round of combat. It was if I thought it was rigged, I'd have called BS, but it was like it's too ridiculous. And they would have had no way of knowing that I was coming on to watch at that exact moment. So
Oh my gosh.
It was just crazy. It was like crit fail, crit fail, crit fail, crit fail. It was rapid fire. So they're just like trading the decks back and forth. Like, this isn't even the one I'm pulling from. Give me the other one. And
yeah,
it was just nonstop. It was that was bananas. It was totally off the rails so fast.
it was. And it was super fun. Like everyone was laughing and having a good time. And like, nobody knew what was going to happen. And like, I tried to write an article a couple years ago about like why I love watching live play D&D shows. And like, one of them is like that idea of like, no one knows what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And like the dungeon master doesn't know what the players are going to do. The players don't know what the dungeon master is going to throw. And then what we put, when we put it all together, what is that going to look like? And just that anticipation of the unknown is so much fun. And it is so incredible. And like, so with that idea, I hope we've kind of sold the people watching this on bring random elements into your game. Welcome random elements into your game. If something pops up that completely breaks your narrative, you don't have to use it. You can take a breath and like, you can always do the Dallas thing. If you wake up and it was all just a dream,
Right.
Or
it turns
whatever.
out last session someone doused you with some magical powder, then you've all been in a dreamscape the whole time. Like if it's really that game destroying, you can do that. But
yeah,
I always felt that player agency and player freedom is the path to a better game experience. And the more restrictions, the more boxes you build around them, the less fun people are going to have, including you. Because now you need to rules lawyer, you need to maintain that like this deep, heavy lore that you need to keep track of for a home game. Matt Mercer's writing 2 books about his game world. Well, that's Matt Mercer. Matt Mercer's also selling that. You at your game world, maybe you guys keep a wiki together. Cool. You can retcon that. Look at Star Wars. Star Wars doesn't care. If they don't care, you shouldn't care.
Yeah.
Star Trek doesn't care. They're like, screw it.
Back in time.
Right. Wipe it. They don't care about their lore, their timeline, nothing. Neither should you.
And it's so much fun too, like when you invite the players in to tell you about the world. Like something I've really gotten into is like when we're coming to a new town or a city, unless like it's a specific town from a player's backstory, then I'll work on it with that player. But it's just to be like, all right, let's figure out what are some of the interesting customs about this town. What's something unique? What's a unique food? Is it they all wear fancy hats? Is it they are known for their spiced tea? Or like, what is it about this town? And like, I think that's cool because again, it gives the players that investment into the lore of the world.
Mhm.
And it's like, okay, we're helping to build this all and shape this all together. And that's a lot more fun than
Yeah, you're walking into a town for the first time. What are some rumors you've heard about this place? And
Mhm.
start incorporating that in and have some fun with that.
Yeah, yeah. And like I know I've brought up Matt Mercer a couple times, but like there's this really I ate Turtle Island, Scotland. Yes, we did. That was exactly what we did for Clinical Role with Turtle Island. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, let's build Tortoga. What's that going to look like? Like, the only bit of lore I threw in was like, this is where the species of turtles in this world have come from. So we're going to call it Turtle Island, and we
And
just
to
made it.
understand, they were normal turtles until they came in contact with a green ooze.
Yes,
And having defeated that ooze, they got enough points to level up into adolescent mutated turtles.
yes. I really want to play it.
Ninja
Turtle
Turtle Camp?
Adventure,
Me too.
Ninja Turtle Turtle campaign. I think it'd be amazing. But like, something that was really fun on again Critical Role was in campaign 2. Marisha's character was talking about what she had heard about this one town,
Mhm.
and I don't know if Matt Mercer had planned it that way, but it was one of those things of like they got to the town and he's like, yeah, Bo was right, this place likes to party. And like that was where I left it, and it's just sort of this thing of like I really feel like he probably heard that and went, that's what this town is now. Right? So it's really fun to be, bouncing around between that.
But it also
Um,
like lets your players feel like they're part of the world
mhm.
because you ask that question and someone turns around and says, "Oh, everyone likes to party," is what I've heard. Yeah, no, they don't. These people in the town don't like to party. In fact, they're staunchly against it. There's no dancing. It's like the town in Footloose. Oh, okay. Thanks for the update, Chief. Like
Yeah.
what do you do with that? Like, why did you
Yeah.
ask? Why don't you just tell us what it is then?
Yeah, yeah, and that's like that thing of like we just want things to grow and to develop, and so like again, the best guidance I can give people is like start if you don't want to get any extra products or anything. Like there's the random magic table,
Mhm.
random tables in your books. Like I love using the random encounter tables in the D&D books, not just for a random combat as they're kind of intended, but more for like atmosphere. Um, that's predominantly why I have players roll on that table now is because like, they roll in the grasslands and they see off in the distance they might see something, something flying, like a couple of giant eagles flying around, right? That's cool. Like are those eagles going to interact with the story? Well, not unless the players decide to go get them, but it adds something more to the world that I just hadn't thought to talk about.
Mhm.
And again, it's like the more I can just bring in stuff that I don't have to plan, the better, because I don't want to have to spend all my time planning.
And maybe it turns into a whole little side thing where they go
Mhm.
off and they deal with these giant eagles for a session or whatever. Like maybe they don't get to exactly where you wanted them to be, but I would always recommend going, like, if you're not going to get any like extra materials or anything like that, definitely jump into your DMG. Um, some of the best fun can be, excuse me, generating a random dungeon from the table they have for that in the DMG.
Mhm.
Just generate a random dungeon and use the random encounter tables and use the random loot tables. You're going to be using 4 pages out of your whole book, and
Mhm.
and like you'll have one monster manual with you. Like, so have your monster manual, 3 pages out of the DMG, and that's going to tell you all the things they find. It's going to tell you all the encounters they have and all the rooms. And there's not a whole lot of prep you need to do for that. You're just one and done. You're just, here we are, here we go.
Yeah.
And you don't have to sit there and agonize over like people's motivations and what about this NPC and what are their stats and am I going to build a custom monster for every? No, man, just go play, have fun. It'll be
Just
fine,
roll with it. Yeah.
and let them be part of it. Let the world happen and
Mhm.
do it together. Everyone will have a great time.
I completely agree. So we've got about 10 minutes left. So I want to make sure that if you have any questions, please put them in the Twitch chat. We'll try to do our best to answer. But like, no, I think that's like awesome guidance. I'm trying to think too. Like seriously, like I think jump in with both feet into your fear too. If you are an anxious dungeon master, um, grab a couple of these random decks. Like I did a stream. It's not on Geeks Like Us yet. I will try to put it up there soon. Which is Let's Break D&D. Where
That was a lot of
you
fun.
played with it. You
I
played with
did.
that one,
Yep.
yeah. We pulled.
When are we
I
doing
think
that again?
we need to do that again.
We
That
do
was
need to do
really
that again.
fun. But we pulled like a stack this high between the deck of wonder and then the deck of all the things, which is
Mhm.
the deck of many things and many more things. And
We make a lot of variations of the deck of many things, and we just put them all in one big box.
yeah,
Which we haven't done. We're all out right now. Actually, we need to do another run of that soon.
yeah, but we pulled. So this is that deck that has
Yikes!
all the things in it, and these can be incredibly great game breaks. But it was hilarious and fun, and
I mean, that's the other thing that like people have come up to us at conventions about products. Back when we had conventions, and they're like, "Oh, well, this is this one card. That's just too much." Okay, let me solve that for you.
just take it and set it aside.
Yeah, you just put it back in the box. Like,
yeah.
I mean, do you really think you're going to blow through 100 cards in a session? Probably not. Pick the 25 you like the most. It's like we make a random loot generator, the deck of plunder, and it's kind of the same ideas. It's like, well, but what if at first level my characters end up with this like these magic swords? What then? Well, first of all, you don't need to put those in there. You can just leave those out. But I promise it's going to balance out. And actually, I'm big in favor of giving characters really cool magic items very early on, and people are like, why? It breaks the game, right? But you got to keep them. Yeah, you got this legendary ultra magic +3 longsword. You don't think every CR5 adventure isn't coming to find you, Farmer John, to take that from you?
Yeah.
No, I'm the prince. Sure you are. You're level 1. You don't think that every CR5 adventure is not coming to take that from you right now? Like, how often does like a +3 magic sword with like 19 things attached to it just plop into the open market? It doesn't. So good luck keeping it. But more importantly, like, yeah, your level 1 characters are going to occasionally find a really cool thing. But your level 15 characters are occasionally going to find 2 copper pieces. So I promise it's going to come out in the wash.
Yeah. And it's okay. It really is okay. Because, like, for those worrying about balancing encounters and stuff, there's no such thing. I really like 5e, but man, the CR system does not
It's
work
not real.
at all.
It's like there is no spoon. Like, go into your DMG and look up the rules for challenge rating. Now start to reverse engineer your monster manual. And now this is an exercise that we have had to do because we've created monsters and items that follow the CR. Bull. Absolute bull.
Yeah.
They don't follow their own rules, and there's no way you get even close to what's in the monster manual if you follow their own rules. Some of them you kind of get near there, but it's like they shot from the hip on most of it, and it's
fine. Like, I think that the CR just kind of gives you an idea of like how challenging should this thing be, not how challenging is it. And so, like, whatever, like, that's part of the joy of being behind the screen is like add more hit points to it, or like, wow, one player who hadn't landed a hit this whole fight suddenly finally got a hit. Yeah, of course they're killing this monster.
You want a broken encounter. Take swarms of rats. And I'm sure someone in the chat like, swarms of rats increase their HP.
Yeah.
Just jack that way up. They will run. I don't care. Figure out the number, average it across their average it appropriate to their CR level, and throw them in. Don't make them stronger. Don't make it easier for them to hit. Just give them more health and put like 4 of them in there. Your characters are going to run away. Your players are going to be like, screw this, I'm out.
Yeah. Yeah. And like that kind of stuff, like you can just mess and tweak with things. And it is cool by learning to go off script, by learning to go, that, and look, 5e says this everywhere, like from the handbook to, player's handbook to dungeon master's handbook and stuff. These are guidelines, right? I love the meme. It's like, it's not rules so much as guidelines, you know, and it's okay. It's just, that's what it is. And we can learn to lean into those guidelines and to flex around that stuff. And it becomes, I think, a lot more fun.
And I mean, there are some rules you should never break. I'm not saying just throw out all the rules and just go crazy. Like there should never be a first level spell better than Magic Missile. And there's a good reason for it, because the moment you start doing that, why would anyone take Magic Missile ever again? And that's already a really powerful spell when you think about it. It always hits.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying throw out all the rules, but the more you kind of go with the punches, just kind of lean into some of the craziness that happens, the more fun I think you'll have in your campaign.
That's definitely. So lean into the random, let your players have some control in the world and engage into that agency, and just have fun. I think you'll enjoy it a lot.
It's almost like it's a game, and we play the game to have fun. It's almost like that's what we're doing here.
Yeah, that's what's going on. But we've got to actually wrap this talk up. I'm going to be right back, because then I'm talking about how to run games for game masters, because that's what I do. I'm talking all afternoon at Save Against Fear.
Lucky you.
Yeah, we got some who said you could have fun at D&D? That's not allowed. Of course it's allowed, Skyman. You can have all the fun.
That is 1,000%. I give you permission.
Hominus Dominus.
You have my blessing.
D&D. Conor, do a plug for your stuff really quickly. We've been kind of plugging it all along because it's.
I think we've plugged it enough. But if you want to check out our stuff, go to gemhammer.com. Find us on social media. We're around. We make the more better game stuff to make your game more better.